You come to Nottingham once too often.
When this is over, my friend, there'll be no need for me to come again.
Your sword, Gisborne.
You know any prayers, my friend?
I'll say one for you.
Let me just put you in the picture. Yesterday we spoke to Charles Hyam, an author who was born in England, spent 16 years here in Australia, was the Herald critic at one stage for theatre. He's been in Hollywood since 1970. He's written biographies on people such as Marlene Dietrich and various other Hollywood stars. The other one, the famous one I just can't think of just for the moment, Marlene Dietrich and I think it may have been Jar Jar Gabor. Anyway, unimportant. Those biographies pale into insignificance. Is at the moment causing so much comment in America that it looks as though it's heading for not only the bestseller lists of 1980, but the bestseller lists of all time. It's called Errol Flynn, The Untold Story. He makes some amazing allegations in this book. The most major one is that Errol Flynn was a Nazi spy for Germany during World War II. Yesterday afternoon, Peter Ford, who is my incoming producer on the show, replacing Peter Adams, who's leaving us, made a call to Nora Eddington. At first she disagreed with our wish to come on air. She felt that it would do no good. We then explained to her, quite truthfully, that the reaction we had after the interview with Charles Hyam yesterday was quite incredible. In the years that I've been doing this program, I've not known any one interview to get so much emotional reaction, particularly from people in Tasmania. Now, you must realise we have a lot of listeners in Tassie, and of course we here in Australia, we consider Errol Flynn to be one of us. He was born and spent a lot of his early youth in Tassie. Nora Eddington then agreed to come on air with us. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first time that she has come out and has represented herself in the media, either in America or, for that matter, anywhere else, in defence of this book. The book itself, Errol Flynn, The Untold Story, is a book which, I think requires a defence from the other side of the coin. I allowed Mr. Hyam yesterday to tell the story exactly as he sees it. Of course, the book does that for him. We haven't got the advantage of reading the book yet in Australia. It's not released here as yet. Nora Eddington, of course, disputes everything that Mr. Hyam has said in his book, and she has agreed to come on air with us this morning to discuss the book. I'm very pleased. She's one of Errol Flynn's 4 wives. She was married to him for, I think it was 8 years, certainly covering the years of the Second World War. And we're touch phoning through in a few moments' time to Miss Eddington to speak with her. She gave birth to 2 daughters by Errol Flynn. I believe that they are up in arms also concerning the publication of the book. Anyway, hopefully Miss Eddington will tell her story for herself. Your number 1. Yesterday we spoke to author Charles Hyam, whose latest book, Errol Flynn, The Untold Story, has caused a furore in America. Here's a recap of what he said.
I was alerted by a Flynn fan who had, by researching, found that Errol Flynn's closest friend, Dr. Herman Urban, was a very major figure in the Gestapo, and that Errol, I discovered through 3 years of very concentrated work in Washington, was his associate spy. People who were in the intelligence branches who checked on Flynn, people who were close to Flynn and checked on Flynn, knew.
So why is it that it hasn't broken before now?
It is a case of great power protecting itself and major facts being hidden from an unsuspecting public.
Why did he do it?
First of all, he was fiercely anti-Semitic and was raised in an anti-Semitic environment in Hobart, Tasmania. Secondly, he met at the very moment when his career was beginning in New Guinea in 1933, just as he was about to leave for the wider world, the most amazing personality he would ever know, Dr. Hermann Frederick Urban, a high-ranking Nazi spy, who became his control from that moment on. His chief activities were as a link between California and Mexico, which was a hotbed of Nazism at the time. He ferried spies to and from Mexico. He supplied Dr. Urban and probably other spies with documents when they needed to travel, and when all their documents had been impounded by the law. He smuggled passports to Dr. Urban when he needed them to spy in Shanghai. Errol Flynn was what one would describe as an associate or sub-agent. Nora Eddington was married to him, it is true, during the war, but he always kept her at a separate address. He would never let her into his house. And indeed, she knew nothing whatever of his Nazi activities and couldn't have known. It is true that Errol Flynn, from the very beginning, was caught up in the Nazi mystique. As an Englishman, as a patriot, as a Jew, it was incumbent upon my conscience to expose Errol Flynn.
Would you like to see Errol Flynn tried as a Nazi criminal post-Humai?
I think that the book is that trial, and I think the verdict is guilty.
It's 17 to 10 o'clock. At the moment, our producer Peter Ford is speaking to Nora Eddington, the former wife of the late Errol Flynn, and she is about to come online with me. They're just fixing up some details there, obviously, and she's waiting for me now. Are you there, Miss Eddington?
Yes, hello.
I do appreciate you taking this call. I wonder if my producer explained to you that yesterday on this program we had Mr. Hyam on, and the reaction by phone and also by telegram, and too soon, of course, for letter, from outraged fans of Mr. Flynn has been quite incredible. Would you speak to me about his allegations?
I certainly will.
Well,
I don't know what it is you want, the only thing I can tell you, asked me what you would like to know, because everyone over here has been absolutely upset with Mr. Hyam.
Right.
And I don't think he thought too well of it this moment. And as I told Mr. Ford, I did go on 2020, which is a television show here in the United States, and I just told them how I felt about Mr. Hyam's book. Now, the best I can do is to try to answer any, if I can, some question you may ask me.
Right, I appreciate that. For a start, let me just say, of course, we have a vested interest here because in Australia we consider Mr. Flynn to be one of us.
Well, you're absolutely right, he was.
Yeah. Well, for a start, the major allegation is that Errol Flynn was a Nazi war spy. What do you say to that?
What I say to that is, what most people might say is that Mr. Flynn, who happened to have been my first husband, had a very dear friend called Dr. Urban, Herman Urban, there were very many doubts about him, and there seemed to be some documents that the doctor was in some way connected with the Nazis. Now, Errol happened to have been a very loyal man in the sense that if Urban was or wasn't, he was still a good friend of his. That does not mean that he went into anything that Urban was doing, which at that time that I was married to him, I met Dr. Urban just once briefly. And that's the only documented thing that Charles Hyam has. So what he is saying is through association. Errol was a Nazi, which is, I can't say the words I'd like to say, but he is absolutely wrong. He is being vicious. He is saying the most dreadful things about him over here. His fan clubs, Errol's fan clubs, have been calling me. They're going crazy. The man is incredible. I don't know what his purpose is except to make money.
I brought up your name to him yesterday, and he said that you would not know anything about his activities because you lived in two separate houses.
He is absolutely wrong. I lived in one separate house when I first came back from Mexico with our infant daughter. because we were adding an addition to the house on Mulholland Farm. You cannot believe a bloody word that Mr. Hyam has to say. And I found that out after meeting with him about 4 or 5 consecutive times. I would not, he wanted to interview me. He said that he could not write the book unless he interviewed me because it was going to be a nice book, it was going to be a decent book, etc. and etc. I would not allow him to tape anything, and when he started reaching certain levels of homosexuality, he repeated this to a syndicated columnist here, and I raised holy hell. I called him, and of course that's Mr. Hyam's problem. That's what he is. And from then on in, I told him, I said, if you quote me or whatever, I'll do whatever I can to sue you. Consequently, when he makes the remark, I wasn't living with Errol, that's ridiculous. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. He never met the man. He doesn't know anything. Half of the things that he says in his book, which have been read to me because I will not buy that filthy rock, is hearsay. Everything is hearsay from another person. I even asked him on the phone when I spoke to him one night. I said, where did you get this information from? He said, well, this producer told me that that director saw him in Mexico, etc., and etc. Now, do you call that documentation?
He also says that Mr. Flynn was very anti-Semitic.
I can't hear you.
He also claimed to me yesterday that Mr. Flynn was very anti-Semitic.
Well, he's absolutely wrong. If he's anti-Semitic, then he's got to be anti-Mexican, and I happen to be half Indian. I'm a half Mexican and half Irish. That's in fight with Michael Curtiz, who was a director, like any actor would have a fight with. He happened to be Jewish. If the guy happened to be Italian, if he happened to be whatever he happened to be, and they got into a fight, are you going to say he's anti-this or anti-that? Why, Charles is completely off his rocker, and as David Niven said, he belongs in a loony bin.
He also said yesterday that the David Niven has done a complete turnabout. That David Niven knew of the spying activities.
Is that now? Why would he? Sure, you're way down in Australia. Why is that? Why he would say that to you? Well, you can get a quote from Hugh Downs on the show 2020 that is not true. And that David Niven came out and said that he couldn't be there. He couldn't be there for the interview because he was on location. But he said that all of those stories were untrue, and that as far as he was concerned, the author was trying to make money. And it's a shame that the dead people cannot protect themselves from this kind of vindictiveness and viciousness. And that as far as he was concerned, quoting David Niven, that he belongs in the loony bin, meaning Charles Hyam, and I agree with him. Olivia de Havilland was asked to appear, and she said, I wouldn't dignify it by my appearance. And I will tell you this very honestly, the show that I was on, which as I say was 2020, it was a 20-minute segment, it's like 60 minutes, the whole feeling was in favor of Errol, and you could feel, they felt like you do, indignant about what this man's doing, and frankly, he is not, everything's going just the opposite for him here. I mean, he's not well liked at all.
The book is making him a fortune, though, isn't it?
Of course that's why he wrote it, because he wants to create this kind of a thing. This is why I didn't want to talk on these shows, but as they said to me, that producer and your friend, Mr. Ford, somebody's got to defend Errol. But my defending him, I was his wife for almost 8 years. I bore him two children. He was not a homosexual. In fact, he made fun of them. He would always kid about them. He loved women. Can I quote something to you from James Bacon, who happens to be a syndicated columnist here in Hollywood, who was a close friend? And he had it in his column, quote, he said, how could a guy who drank a quart of vodka a day in between romps in the hay with young women ever find time to spy? How could a government as devious and ruthless as the Third Reich ever entrust any secrets with a swinger like Errol?
Mr. Hyam also said yesterday that it intrigues him that Olivia de Havilland is the only star to come out in his defense.
Oh, I can almost give you an answer to that. I have seen quite a few talk shows here. I'm not going to throw any names around, but most of them have said that, first of all, that they always attack the author by saying, because they're doing other books on people that are dead, that all they want to do is write books, make money.